What happens when a picture-perfect life explodes? Catherine Bell was living a fairy tale. Married to the charismatic tech millionaire Alistair Finch, pregnant with their first child and living in a mansion that overlooked the ocean. Then during one lavish dinner with a single ice-cold sentence, Alistair ended it all. He wanted a divorce, effective immediately. A stunned pregnant Catherine was left alone in their palace of glass and stone. But what happened next is something no one, least of all Alistair, could have ever predicted. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of an alliance forged in the fire of heartbreak and a fight for justice that would shake an empire to its core. The crystal glasses on the table at Perse were so fine, Catherine Bell was almost afraid to touch them. They seemed to hum with the quiet, expensive energy of the room, a 3-Michelin-star temple of gastronomy overlooking Columbus Circle. Each plate that arrived was a work of art, a miniature sculpture of foam gelée and impossibly fresh ingredients. It was all so perfect. Too perfect. Catherine shifted in her plush velvet chair, the silk of her emerald green maternity dress whispering against the fabric. At 5 months pregnant, she was just beginning to show a gentle, happy curve that she would often rest her hand upon, a silent promise of the future. She smiled across the table at her husband, Alistair Finch. To the outside world, Alistair was a titan. At 38, he was the founder and CEO of Nexus Dynamics, a tech firm that had revolutionized data logistics. His face, with its sharp jawline, intense blue eyes, and perpetually confident smirk, had graced the covers of Forbes and Wired. He moved with an economy of motion, a man who believed every second of his time was worth $1,000. To Catherine, for the past 4 years, he had been the architect of her world. "Is the oysters and pearls to your liking, my love?" Alistair asked, though he didn't look up from his phone. He was scrolling through market data, his thumb moving with practiced speed. "It's incredible," she said, her voice soft. "Everything is. Thank you for this." He finally locked the phone and placed it face down on the pristine white tablecloth, a gesture that was meant to signify his complete attention, but felt more like a temporary ceasefire. He picked up his wine glass, swirling the pale gold liquid. "Catherine," he began, his tone shifting. The warmth that had been there, however faint, evaporated, replaced by the cool, clipped cadence he used in the boardroom. "We need to discuss the future." A thrill of excitement shot through her. Were they finally going to talk about baby names, nurseries? The trip to Tuscany he'd promised for their baby moon. "I'd love to," she said, leaning forward slightly. "I was thinking, if it is a boy, maybe we could honor your father, Michael." Alistair blinked, as if her words were in a foreign language he couldn't be bothered to translate. "No, not that. I'm talking about our future, yours and mine, separately." The air in Catherine's lungs turned to ice. The distant chatter of the restaurant, the gentle clinking of cutlery, all of it faded into a dull, roaring hum in her ears. Separately. What? "What are you talking about, Alistair?" He sighed, a sound of pure, unadulterated impatience, as if she were a slow employee failing to grasp a simple concept. "I've instructed my lawyer, Mr. Davies, to draw up the divorce papers. They are for all intents and purposes finalized. I wanted to tell you here in a civilized manner before they are served to you at the house tomorrow. Divorce." The word felt alien on her tongue, a jagged stone. "No, you're joking. This is a joke, a horrible, cruel joke." Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She looked into his eyes, searching for the man she loved, the man who had whispered promises to her under Egyptian cotton sheets, who had held her hand during the first ultrasound, but she found only a stranger. A cold, calculating stranger. "I am not joking, Catherine. I am never more serious than when it comes to practicalities," he said, taking a sip of his wine. "Our marriage is no longer a viable partnership. My circumstances have changed. My needs have changed." "Your circumstances?" Her voice trembled, a mixture of confusion and rising panic. I'm pregnant, Alistair. I am carrying our child. How have your circumstances possibly changed more than that? He had the audacity to look bored. The pregnancy is a complication, I admit, but not an insurmountable one. The child will be provided for. Extravagantly. I have stipulated a very, very generous trust. You in turn will be compensated according to the prenuptial agreement. It's quite ironclad, as I'm sure you'll recall. The prenup. A document she had signed in a haze of love and trust, a 20-page monstrosity his lawyer had slid in front of her a week before their wedding. Alistair had called it a simple corporate formality. She hadn't even read it closely. She had trusted him. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and shameful. Why? Just tell me why. Is it someone else? He considered the question for a moment as if weighing the strategic pros and cons of telling the truth. That is an oversimplification of a complex situation, he said finally. But yes, there is someone else. Her name is Isabella Rossi. She's a business associate. She understands the world I live in, the pressures, the demands. Isabella Rossi. The name struck Catherine like a physical blow. A stunning, raven-haired Italian heiress and venture capitalist who had been circling Alistair's company for months. Catherine had met her once at a charity gala. Isabella had looked straight through her, her eyes dismissing Catherine as a pretty but ultimately irrelevant accessory. So what, you just discard me? The words were barely a whisper. 4 years. Our baby. It means nothing. It means that it has run its course, Alistair said, placing his napkin on the table. He stood up, straightening his bespoke suit jacket. The car will take you home. I have another engagement. The papers will arrive around 10 a.m. I would advise you to have a lawyer present, though it will make little difference to the outcome. He didn't lean in to kiss her. He didn't touch her shoulder. He simply turned and walked away, a king leaving his court, never once looking back. Catherine sat there alone at the table for two, surrounded by the debris of a multi-thousand-dollar meal she could no longer eat. The waiter approached cautiously. "Is everything all right, madam?" She couldn't speak. She could only nod, a single jerky motion. The tears she had been holding back began to fall, tracing cold paths down her cheeks, dripping onto the pristine silk of her dress. She was no longer Catherine Bell, wife of a millionaire. She was a complication, a partnership that was no longer viable. The ride home to their sprawling Greenwich, Connecticut estate was a blur of streetlights and silent sobs. The house, usually a symbol of their shared success and happiness, felt like a mausoleum. It was vast, cold, and achingly empty. Every photo on the wall of them laughing in Bali, skiing in Aspen, celebrating their anniversary, was a monument to a lie. She walked into the master bedroom, a space larger than the apartment she'd grown up in. Alistair's side of the closet was already empty. His valet had been here. It had all been planned. This wasn't a sudden decision. It was a corporate extraction executed with chilling precision. She spent the night curled in a guest room, unable to bear the scent of him on their sheets. She didn't sleep. She just lay there, one hand on her belly, feeling the faint fluttering movements of the life inside her. It was the only thing that felt real in a world that had just been shattered into a million pieces. She was alone, pregnant, and about to be divorced by a man who treated her like a defunct asset to be liquidated. Morning came not with sunlight, but with a gray, drizzling rain that matched the despair in her soul. She sat in the cavernous living room, staring out at the manicured lawns that rolled down towards the Long Island Sound. She felt nothing. She was a ghost in her own life. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell chimed, a sound as sharp and final as a guillotine's fall. She thought it was the courier with the divorce papers, the final nail in the coffin of her marriage. Her body tensed, preparing for the next wave of pain. She opened the massive oak door. It wasn't a courier. Standing on the rain-slicked flagstone porch, flanked by two large Louis Vuitton suitcases, was Eleanor Finch, Alistair's mother. Eleanor was a woman carved from New England granite and old money. Tall, impeccably dressed in a cashmere coat with her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon, she possessed an aura of formidable authority. Her eyes, the same piercing blue as her son's, held a look that was not pity, but something far more complex, a fierce, unyielding resolve. Catherine stared at her confused. They had a cordial but distant relationship. Eleanor was polite but always kept a certain emotional distance, as if observing Catherine from behind a pane of glass. "Eleanor," Catherine stammered. What are you doing here?" Eleanor Finch looked past Catherine into the cold, opulent foyer of the house her son had built. Then her gaze returned to Catherine, softening just slightly as it rested on the small swell of her stomach. "I heard what my son did," she said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the damp morning air. "He is a fool and a coward. So I packed my bags." She took a step forward, crossing the threshold and bringing the scent of rain and expensive perfume into the house. "If you'll have me," Eleanor Finch declared, "I'm moving in." For a long moment, Catherine could only stare. Eleanor Finch, standing in the marble-floored foyer of the home her son had just ripped from Catherine's life, was an impossible apparition. The woman who had always treated her with a polite, almost clinical distance, who sent perfectly chosen impersonal gifts for birthdays and anniversaries, was now standing amidst her designer luggage with the defiant air of a general occupying enemy territory. Catherine's mind, fogged with grief and exhaustion, struggled to process the scene. Was this a trick, a Trojan horse sent by Alistair to manage the situation to ensure she signed the papers without a fuss? The Finch family, she was learning, operated on a level of strategy she was only just beginning to comprehend. "Move in," Catherine finally managed, her voice hoarse. "Eleanor, with all due respect, I don't understand. You're his mother." "And you are the mother of my grandchild," Eleanor retorted, her gaze unwavering. "That is a blood tie, my dear. A biological fact. A marriage certificate, as you have so brutally discovered, is merely a contract. And my son has just demonstrated what he thinks of contracts." She stepped further into the house, her sharp eyes scanning the cavernous, impersonal space. It was a show home decorated by a high-priced designer Alistair had hired, filled with modern art he'd bought as an investment and furniture that was more sculpture than comfort. It was a reflection of Alistair himself, impressive, expensive, and utterly devoid of warmth. "May I have some tea?" Eleanor asked, already shrugging off her cashmere coat. "Earl Grey if you have it. And I suggest you have some chamomile. It will be good for you. And for the baby." It wasn't a request. It was a gentle command. Numbly, Catherine led the way to the state-of-the-art kitchen, a vast expanse of stainless steel and Italian marble that she had never truly felt comfortable in. As she filled the kettle, her hands trembling, Eleanor surveyed the room with a critical eye. "This kitchen is absurd," she commented, running a finger along a sterile countertop. "It's designed for caterers, not for people. No soul." Catherine turned, leaning against the counter, her resolve crumbling. "Why are you really here, Eleanor? Did he send you to what? Make sure I don't make a scene?" The question hung in the air between them. Eleanor's composed expression finally softened, and for the first time Catherine saw a flicker of the woman behind the formidable facade. She saw a deep, weary sadness in her eyes. "Alistair did not send me," Eleanor said, her voice losing its crisp edge, becoming something more intimate. "In fact, he would be incandescent with rage if he knew I was here. I imagine he will be soon enough. I telephoned him this morning after I heard the news from a friend on the board of his company. The Isabella Rossi situation is apparently common knowledge in their circle." She said the name with a quiet, venomous disdain. "I told him," Eleanor continued, "that if he went through with this cruelty, he would not be just divorcing his wife. He would be severing his relationship with his mother. He called my bluff. He told me I was being overly sentimental. So I am here." The kettle began to whistle, a shrill scream in the quiet house. Catherine poured the hot water into 2 mugs, her mind still reeling. "But why?" Catherine whispered, handing a mug to her mother-in-law. "He's your son, your only child." Eleanor took the mug and led the way to a small, uncomfortable-looking sofa in the adjacent living area. She sat down perfectly poised and patted the seat next to her. Catherine hesitated for a second before sinking into the cushion. "Catherine, I am going to tell you something I have not spoken of in over 20 years. Eleanor began, her gaze fixed on the gray, rain-lashed view outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I am going to tell you about Michael Finch, Alistair's father. The man was a legend, a Wall Street phantom who had built a colossal fortune in the 80s and died of a sudden heart attack on his yacht in Monaco when Alistair was just a teenager. Alistair rarely spoke of him, and when he did, it was with a mixture of reverence and rivalry. Michael, like Alistair, was brilliant, Eleanor said. He was charming, magnetic. When he focused his attention on you, it felt like standing in the sun. I was young, from a good family, but with little money of my own. I was utterly bewitched. We married, and he gave me a beautiful life. A house much like this one Jules Travel. And a son." She paused, taking a slow sip of her tea. "For 15 years, I believed I was the happiest woman in the world. And then one evening he came home, sat me down in our library, and told me he had met someone else, a younger woman. He informed me that our marriage was over and that his lawyers had an agreement for me to sign. It was non-negotiable." Catherine stared at her, speechless. The parallel was uncanny, a chilling echo down the decades. "I was a fool," Eleanor continued, her voice laced with the memory of old pain. "I had no resources of my own. I had signed a prenuptial agreement just like you did without truly understanding what it meant. I was completely dependent on him. He told me I could have the house and a comfortable allowance provided I was discreet. If I fought him, he would cut me off entirely and paint me as an unstable shrew in the press. I was trapped. I had a teenage son to think about." "What did you do?" Catherine breathed. "I signed the papers," Eleanor said, a flash of fire in her eyes. "I took the deal, and I hated myself for it every single day. I smiled at society functions, raised my son, and maintained the facade of the dignified ex-wife. But inside I was hollowed out. Michael died 2 years later, and his fortune, the bulk of it, went to his new wife. Alistair and I were left with a trust fund that, while substantial, was a pittance compared to his true wealth." She turned to face Catherine fully. "I watched my son grow up idolizing a man who was a brilliant monster. I tried to teach him empathy, to instill in him a sense of decency, to warn him against becoming his father. I thought I had succeeded. I see now that I failed. The worst parts of Michael didn't die with him. They lay dormant in Alistair, and his success has watered them, made them grow. What he is doing to you, it is not just an echo of his father. It is a perfect, monstrous replication." The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't pity. This was a reckoning. Eleanor wasn't just here for Catherine. She was here for the ghost of her younger self, for the woman who had been forced to surrender. A single fat tear rolled down Catherine's cheek. He said I was no longer a viable partnership. That is Michael's language." Eleanor spat, her composure finally breaking into raw anger. "Cold, transactional, cruel. He is erasing you just as his father erased me. But this time is different." "How?" Catherine asked, her voice thick with despair. "The prenup. He said it's ironclad." "There is no such thing as an ironclad agreement when a man is hiding his true worth and acting in bad faith," Eleanor declared. "And more importantly, this time, there are 2 of us. And I am no longer a frightened, financially dependent girl. I have my own money, my own connections. And you," she said, her eyes falling to Catherine's stomach, "have the ultimate leverage. You carry the Finch legacy, not Isabella Rossi. You." Just then the doorbell chimed again, a different sound this time, sharper, more insistent. Both women froze. "That will be the papers," Catherine whispered, a fresh wave of nausea rolling over her. Eleanor stood up, her back ramrod straight. "I'll get it." She walked to the door and opened it. A young man in a courier's uniform stood there, holding a thick, leather-bound portfolio. "For Catherine Bell," he said. "I will take it." Eleanor said, her voice leaving no room for argument. She signed the device, took the portfolio, and shut the door. She walked back into the living room and placed the document on the glass coffee table. It landed with a soft final thud. It was embossed with the logo of a prestigious, ruthless law firm. Catherine stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. All the fight that had begun to stir in her withered. "It's over," she said, her voice flat. "He's won." "Nonsense." Eleanor snapped, her energy galvanizing the room. She picked up her phone from her purse. "This is not an ending. This is the beginning of a negotiation, and we will not be using a lawyer Alistair would expect. We will not be using a lawyer from his world at all." She scrolled through her contacts, her painted fingernail tapping decisively on the screen. "When my husband left me, I was given a list of appropriate legal representatives. Quiet, dignified men who would manage my surrender gracefully. But there was one name I heard whispered, a woman they told me to avoid at all costs. They called her a shark, a bulldog. They said she was unladylike in her tactics." A slow smile spread across Eleanor Finch's face, a genuinely predatory, beautiful thing. "I have kept her number for 22 years, hoping I would never need it. It seems I was saving it for you." She pressed the call button. "Yes, hello," she said, her voice pure steel. "My name is Eleanor Finch. I am calling on behalf of my daughter-in-law, Catherine Bell. We need to book a consultation with Ms. Juliana Hayes. Yes, I'm aware of her hourly rate. That will not be a problem. We'll be there this afternoon." Juliana Hayes's office was not in the expected glass tower in Midtown. Instead, it occupied the top floor of a renovated cast-iron building in Soho, a neighborhood of art galleries and fashion boutiques. The elevator opened directly into a reception area that felt more like a modern art installation than a law firm. The walls were stark white, adorned with large, aggressive, abstract paintings in black and red. The furniture was minimalist, uncomfortable-looking, and brutally chic. There was no soothing music, only the low hum of the city outside. It was a space that did not offer comfort. It demanded respect. A young man with an impossibly sharp haircut and an all-black suit greeted them. "Ms. Finch, Ms. Bell. Ms. Hayes will see you now." He led them down a hallway to a corner office with panoramic windows, and there, standing against the backdrop of the New York skyline like a general surveying her battlefield, was Juliana Hayes. She was not what Catherine had expected. She was in her late 40s, petite and wiry, dressed in a razor-sharp navy blue dress that was both severe and stylish. Her dark hair was cut in a severe geometric bob that framed a face with high cheekbones and intelligent, dissecting eyes. She didn't smile as they entered. She simply watched them, her expression a neutral mask of assessment. "Eleanor," Juliana said, her voice a low, precise alto. "It has been a long time. I'm sorry for the circumstances." She gestured towards the two chairs opposite her large, uncluttered glass desk. "Please." As they sat, Juliana's gaze shifted to Catherine. It wasn't unkind, but it was intensely analytical, as if she were scanning Catherine for weaknesses. "Mrs. Bell." She began, using the formal address Eleanor has given me, the broad strokes. "Your husband, Alistair Finch, has served you with a proposal for dissolution of marriage. You are 5 months pregnant with his child. He has, I presume, offered you the bare minimum stipulated in your prenuptial agreement." Catherine, feeling small and exposed in the powerful room, could only nod. "He called it generous." A dry, almost silent laugh escaped Juliana's lips. "Men like Alistair Finch always do. They believe their table scraps are a feast for the rest of us. May I see the documents?" Eleanor slid the leather-bound portfolio across the vast expanse of the glass desk. For the next 20 minutes, silence descended upon the room, broken only by the whisper of pages turning. Juliana read with terrifying focus, her eyes scanning line after line. Occasionally she would make a small note on a legal pad with a silver pen, her handwriting as sharp and precise as her appearance. Catherine felt her anxiety build with every passing second. She watched Juliana's face for any sign of hope, but the lawyer's expression remained unreadable. Finally, Juliana reached the last page, closed the portfolio, and folded her hands on top of it. She looked directly at Catherine. "This," she said, tapping the portfolio, "is a work of art, a masterpiece of legal warfare designed to leave you with absolutely nothing." The bluntness of the statement hit Catherine like a physical blow. "Mr. Davies, his lawyer, is very good at his job." Juliana continued, her tone clinical. "The agreement you signed is a fortress. Every clause is designed to strip you of any claim to marital assets. It defines marital property so narrowly that the only thing you are likely entitled to is a fraction of the value of the furniture. It waives your right to spousal support beyond a token time-limited amount. It attributes the vast increase in his net worth during your marriage solely to pre-existing business interests, effectively shielding his entire empire from you. On paper, it is, as your husband likely told you, ironclad." Eleanor leaned forward. "But—" Juliana's eyes gleamed with a predatory light. "But fortresses have cracks, and masterpieces can be flawed. This document, for all its technical brilliance, has two fundamental weaknesses." She held up one finger. "One, fraudulent inducement. Eleanor, when you signed your agreement with Michael, was it presented to you as a non-negotiable condition of marriage with little time for independent review?" "Yes," Eleanor said instantly. "It was positioned as a mere formality a week before the wedding. I was told that to question it was to question his love." Juliana looked at Catherine. "And you?" Catherine thought back to the haze of her engagement. "The same. Exactly the same. Alistair said it was something his board of directors required. His lawyer, Mr. Davies, was there. He was very charming. He explained it was just to protect the company. I had a lawyer, but he was a friend of my father's who handled real estate. He was completely out of his depth. He advised me to sign it." "Of course he did," Juliana said with a sigh. "We will argue that you were coerced, that you were not given adequate time or competent independent counsel, and that the terms were so unconscionable as to be unenforceable. It's a difficult argument to win, but it creates a nuisance. It muddies the water." She held up a second finger. "Weakness number 2 is far more significant. Full and frank financial disclosure. A prenuptial agreement is only valid if both parties accurately disclose their assets at the time of signing. More importantly, in a divorce proceeding, both parties are required to disclose their current assets. Men like Alistair Finch and his father before him do not like disclosure. They build their empires in the shadows. They use shell corporations' offshore accounts and tangled webs of trusts to hide their true worth. They present one picture to the IRS, another to the SEC, and a third, much smaller one, to their divorcing wives." Her voice dropped, becoming conspiratorial exciting. "Our job is not to attack the prenup head-on. Our job is to demand a forensic accounting of every single penny Alistair Finch has. We will subpoena his company, his partners, his investment managers. We will make the process of disclosure so invasive, so expensive, and so potentially revealing of things he does not want revealed that his ironclad agreement suddenly becomes a very heavy anchor." Catherine felt a flicker of hope, the first she'd felt in what seemed like an eternity. "You think he's hiding money?" Juliana laughed again, a sharp metallic sound. "My dear, a man worth $1 billion on paper is almost certainly worth $2 or $3 billion in reality. The question is not if he's hiding it. The question is where." She leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking softly. "Which brings us to the child." Her gaze softened for the first time as she looked at Catherine's stomach. "This is not just a divorce anymore. This is a matter of child support and inheritance. The state of Connecticut has guidelines for child support, but those guidelines become suggestions when dealing with high net worth individuals. We will argue that this child is entitled to a lifestyle commensurate with his father's true wealth, not a trust fund controlled by Alistair, but direct, substantial, court-ordered support. We will demand private school security nannies, dedicated housing, travel. We will create a budget for this child that will make his eyes water. But more than that," she went on, her eyes locking with Eleanor's. "This child is the Finch heir, the only carrier of his bloodline. This makes his affair with Isabella Rossi look not just callous but foolish. He is discarding the mother of his legacy for a temporary amusement. We will not say this in court, of course, but we will make sure it is understood in the court of public opinion and in the boardrooms of his company." The scope of it, the sheer aggression, was terrifying and exhilarating. This was not a legal dispute. It was war waged with subpoenas and forensic accountants instead of soldiers. "Now," Juliana said, her tone shifting back to business, "this will be a brutal, ugly, and very public fight. Alistair will not play fair. He will hire private investigators. They will dig into your past, your family, your friends. They will try to paint you as a gold digger, an unstable, hysteric, and unfit mother. They will leak stories to the press. Are you prepared for that?" she asked, her eyes boring into Catherine. Catherine looked at her hands, then at Eleanor, whose face was a mask of grim determination. She thought of Alistair's cold, dismissive face at the restaurant. She thought of him calling their baby a complication. A fire she didn't know she possessed began to burn in her chest. "What do you need me to do?" Catherine asked, her voice quiet but firm. A slow, satisfied smile finally graced Juliana Hayes's lips. It transformed her face, making her look like the shark the old guard lawyers whispered about. "Good," she said. "First, you and Eleanor will go back to that house, and you will not leave. It is your marital home. Do not let him intimidate you into leaving. From this moment on, all communication goes through me. You do not speak to him. You do not answer his calls. If he shows up, you do not let him in. You call me." She slid a notebook and the silver pen across the desk to Catherine. "Second, you will start a journal. Document everything. Every interaction you've ever had concerning finances. Every promise he ever made. Every conversation about the baby. Dates, times, locations, details. His casual mention of buying a private island, the small loan he gave to a friend, the antique watch he bought that was worth more than a car. These are the threads we will pull. Third," she said, looking at Eleanor, "you know the world he comes from, the people, the places. We need to find his pressure points. A board member who values family. An old rival who would love to see him stumble. We need leverage outside the courtroom." Juliana stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. "My retainer is $100,000. Eleanor has assured me this is not an issue. We will begin discovery immediately. This will be a long road, Catherine. But I promise you this, by the time we are done, Alistair Finch will learn that a viable partnership is a two-way street, and that his complication is about to become the most expensive problem he has ever had." Leaving the office and stepping back into the Soho streets, Catherine felt different. The fog of grief had not lifted, but it was pierced by a single sharp beam of light. She was no longer a victim adrift in the wreckage of her life. She was a client, a combatant. Alongside her formidable mother-in-law, she had just hired a shark, and they were going hunting. Returning to the Greenwich estate was a profoundly different experience. The house was no longer a cold, lonely mausoleum of a failed marriage. With Eleanor Finch striding through its halls, it had become a fortress, a command center. The air, once thick with Catherine's despair, now crackled with purpose. A siege was coming, and they were preparing the ramparts. That very afternoon, a locksmith summoned by Eleanor arrived and discreetly changed every lock on the property. The household staff, a chef, a housekeeper, and a groundskeeper, all hired and paid by Alistair, were politely but firmly given 2 weeks of paid leave. "We need privacy," Eleanor had told them, her tone brokering no argument. She then arranged for groceries to be delivered, and to Catherine's astonishment began methodically and expertly cleaning the soulless kitchen herself. "When you are at war," Eleanor stated, wiping down a marble surface with a vigor that belied her age and station, "you control your supply lines and you eliminate potential spies. Alistair pays their salaries. Their loyalty is to him." For Catherine, this new reality was disorienting but grounding. The overwhelming grief still washed over her in waves, but now it was tempered by a new, unfamiliar feeling agency. Following Juliana's instructions, she took the expensive leather-bound notebook intended for a wedding guest list and repurposed it as her war journal. She sat in the morning room, the rain still streaking down the glass panes, and began to write. At first her mind was blank, a canvas of pain. But then she started small, remembering a conversation from last Christmas at Alistair's ski lodge in Aspen. December 26th. Alistair was on a conference call in front of the fireplace. I brought him a brandy. He was laughing with someone on the phone. After he hung up, he was giddy. He kissed me and said, "The deal in Dubai is done. I had to pay our consultant an absolute fortune, but it's worth it." I asked who the consultant was. He just winked and said, "A very helpful little P.O. box in the Cayman Islands." He thought it was hilarious. He called it Nexus Dynamics Atlantic. The memory, innocuous at the time, now seemed sinister. She wrote it down, her handwriting shaky but clear. Another memory surfaced. A charity auction in New York 2 years ago. April 2 years ago. The Met Gala. Alistair was trying to get a zoning variance for a new data center. Senator Thompson was the keynote speaker. Alistair won the bidding on a terrible painting for $250,000. When we got in the car, I said it was a lot to pay for an ugly painting. He laughed and said, "I didn't buy a painting, I bought a zoning variance. The senator's favorite charity will be very grateful." She kept writing, the threads pulling loose from the tapestry of their life together. The offhand remark about the 3 different sets of books his accountants kept, one for me, one for my partners, and one for Uncle Sam. The time he'd boasted that his real net worth was an imaginary number, because so much of it was tied up in untraceable art and offshore holding companies designed to be invisible. Each memory was a small, sharp stone she was adding to her side of the scales. While Catherine mined the past, Eleanor was working the present. She sat in the formal living room, her posture perfect, her phone to her ear. Her conversations were masterpieces of subtlety. "Meredith, darling, how lovely to hear your voice," she cooed to the wife of Marcus Thorne, the most influential member of Nexus Dynamics' board of directors. "Yes, I'm staying with Catherine for a bit. She needs me. Oh, you know, Alistair is going through a difficult phase. It's so reminiscent of his father. You remember that terrible business with the younger woman? He became so erratic, so unpredictable. His judgment was impaired. It's heartbreaking to see the pattern repeat. One worries about the stability of things you know with the company. This Isabella Rossi, I've heard she encourages his worst impulses." She would pause, letting the poison seep in. "Of course I'm sure it's nothing. He's a brilliant boy. But a man with a pregnant wife at home making such rash decisions. It does make one wonder. Do give Marcus my best." She was not attacking. She was expressing concern. She was planting a seed of doubt, not in Alistair's morality, but in something far more important to a man like Marcus Thorne, his stability and, by extension, the security of his investment. The first counterattack from Alistair came 2 days later. Catherine's phone rang, and his face, a smiling selfie from their trip to Bali, flashed on the screen. Her heart leaped into her throat. Her first instinct, born of 4 years of conditioning, was to answer. Eleanor, who seemed to possess a sixth sense, walked into the room. "Don't," she said, her voice calm. "Let it ring." Catherine stared at the phone, her hand trembling as it rang and rang before finally falling silent. A text message immediately followed. "Catherine, pick up the phone. We need to talk. Don't be childish." Another came a minute later. "Are you seriously having my mother screen my calls? This is absurd. I will not have my personal life dictated by some overpriced lawyer. I am coming over." The message sent a jolt of pure terror through her. "He's coming," she whispered, holding the phone out to Eleanor. Eleanor read the text, and her lips thinned into a hard line. "Good," she said. "Let him." An hour later, the sleek black form of Alistair's McLaren supercar crunched up the gravel driveway. He got out dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, looking every inch the master of the universe returning to his castle. He strode to the front door and tried his key. It didn't fit. He tried it again, jamming it in with force. The sound of metal grating against the new lock was loud in the quiet house. He stepped back, a look of pure disbelief on his face, and pressed the doorbell, a long, angry buzz. Catherine and Eleanor stood in the foyer watching the video feed from the security camera on a tablet. Alistair's face, handsome and familiar, was twisted into a mask of rage. "Catherine!" he shouted, his voice muffled by the thick oak door. "Open this door right now! This is my house!" Eleanor calmly pressed the button for the intercom. "Alistair!" her voice boomed out onto the porch, cool and clear. "You are no longer welcome here. This is Catherine's marital home." On the screen, Alistair looked as if he'd been slapped. "Mother, what in God's name are you doing? Let me in." "No," Eleanor's voice replied through the speaker. "You have made your choice. You chose to abandon your pregnant wife. You do not get to choose the consequences. If you have anything to say to Catherine, you can say it through her lawyer. Now please leave the premises before you are filmed trespassing." "My lawyer!" he roared, laughing, a bitter, ugly sound. "You think Juliana Hayes is going to scare me? I will bury you. I will bury both of you in legal fees. I will prove Catherine is an unfit mother. I will take my child." "You will do nothing of the sort." Eleanor interrupted, her voice dropping to a dangerously low temperature. "Your father tried this same pathetic bullying Alistair. He tried to intimidate me, to threaten me. It was beneath him then, and it is beneath you now. You are behaving like a cornered animal, not the titan of industry you pretend to be. Leave." Catherine, watching, felt a surge of courage. She stepped forward and pressed the talk button herself. Her voice was shaking, but it was clear. "Leave Alistair. Speak to my lawyer." On the screen, his face registered pure shock. It was one thing to be defied by his mother, whom he considered a sentimental relic. It was another to be defied by Catherine, the woman he had deemed docile and disposable. He stared at the camera, his blue eyes burning with a cold fire. Then, without another word, he turned on his heel, stalked back to his car, and sped away, spitting gravel from his tires. Catherine let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, her legs feeling weak. Eleanor put a firm, steadying hand on her shoulder. "The first charge has been repelled," she said quietly. "Well done." The true counteroffensive landed the next day, not at their door, but in the heart of Alistair's empire. In his gleaming office overlooking Manhattan, Alistair was meeting with his lawyer, the smooth and unflappable Mr. Davies. "She's refusing to speak with me," Alistair raged, pacing in front of the windows. "They've changed the locks. My mother is in there with her, plotting against me." Mr. Davies, a man who specialized in quiet, orderly dissolutions, looked uncomfortable. "Alistair, I warned you that this approach was aggressive. It was bound to provoke a reaction." "It's a negotiation tactic," Alistair snapped. "She'll fold." Just then, Davies' assistant entered, carrying a box so thick with paper it looked like a ream of printer stock. "This just arrived by courier for you, Mr. Davies, from the offices of Juliana Hayes." Davies opened the box. His calm, professional demeanor began to dissolve as he lifted out the first document. It was a single-spaced, 200-page request for financial discovery. It demanded everything. Every personal and corporate tax return for the last 10 years, every bank statement from every account, domestic and international, every stock transaction, every email related to the formation of any shell company or trust, full documentation on the purchase of all art and property, including the consulting fees for the Dubai deal and the donation to Senator Thompson's charity. It was a legal shock and awe campaign. It was an invoice for the war to come. Davies paled. He looked up at his client, the bravado gone from his face. "Alistair," he said, his voice grim, "this is not a negotiation tactic. She's not trying to get a better settlement." He held up the massive document. "She's trying to get your entire company." Alistair reacted to Juliana's aggressive financial inquiries with full-scale warfare. His legal team swiftly filed motions to block the subpoenas, labeling them frivolous harassment. Simultaneously, Alistair weaponized the media against Catherine. A scathing tabloid article depicted her as a ruthless gold digger exploiting her pregnancy for money. Photographers and surveillance vehicles lingered outside her home, escalating her stress and anxiety. Eleanor, ever composed, shielded Catherine fiercely. "He wants you to crumble," she counseled, strengthening Catherine's resolve. "Your strength is your greatest asset." Amidst sleepless nights, Catherine's meticulous journaling revealed a pivotal memory: their third anniversary trip to St. Bart's. Alistair had shown her a corporate structure labeled Project Chimera, boasting it was an untraceable Liechtenstein foundation holding Nexus Dynamics' most valuable patents. Catherine recalled his chilling remark clearly. "It's legal if you can afford the lawyers to make it legal." When Catherine shared this crucial discovery, Eleanor immediately arranged a secure call with Juliana Hayes. "Project Chimera," Juliana repeated sharply, excitement evident in her voice. "Liechtenstein means secrecy, tax evasion, asset hiding, corporate fraud. This could escalate beyond divorce court to criminal charges." Catherine hesitated, troubled by the idea of Alistair facing prison. "He built this trap himself," Eleanor gently reminded her. "Not you." "Precisely," Juliana interjected. "This is leverage. If Alistair fights disclosure, he risks contempt of court. Compliance reveals the fraud. Plus, this revelation will terrify his board, turning his personal scandal into corporate catastrophe." Armed with this powerful insight, Juliana swiftly amended their legal filings to specifically target Project Chimera. Alistair's facade was finally unraveling. Within 24 hours, Juliana filed a precise, devastating motion with the court. It detailed the existence of Project Chimera, a Liechtenstein foundation hiding Nexus Dynamics' core intellectual property. The implication was clear: Alistair had committed corporate fraud. Alistair Finch stared at the document, stunned. "How could they know?" he asked desperately, looking at his shaken lawyer. "I don't know, but they do," Davies responded gravely. "This isn't a bluff. If a judge grants this motion, and they likely will, we must either produce evidence that reveals your fraud or face contempt of court." "Stop it," Alistair ordered. "Appeal delay, do something." Davies shook his head firmly. "It's too late. Juliana Hayes has cornered you perfectly. This isn't divorce law. It's criminal territory now." Across town, Eleanor Finch executed her final strategic move. At a discreet lunch with Marcus Thorne, chairman of the Nexus Dynamics board, she expressed grave concern about Alistair's reckless actions, subtly dropping mentions of Liechtenstein. That evening, Marcus called an emergency board meeting, confronting Alistair with Juliana's motion. "Did you really think you could hide assets from us? Project Chimera puts the entire company at risk." The board swiftly stripped Alistair of his power and launched a forensic audit. His personal life unraveled just as quickly. Isabella Rossi, his lover, coldly dismissed him, branding him a toxic liability. Shattered and alone, Alistair saw clearly that only one option remained: total surrender. The next morning, his assistant called the Greenwich house. "Mr. Finch requests a meeting with Mrs. Bell," she said timidly. "At her convenience." Eleanor glanced at Catherine, visibly pregnant and resolute. "Tell Mr. Finch she will meet him here tomorrow at noon." Catherine sat calmly in the sunlit morning room as Alistair entered, defeated and humbled. "I'm sorry," he began weakly, but Catherine stopped him sharply. "You're sorry you got caught. Juliana's terms are final." He read the brutal conditions. Catherine receives the Greenwich estate outright, and $200 million in a trust for Catherine and their child, controlled exclusively by Catherine. Catherine has full custody. Alistair allowed supervised visits only after extensive therapy. Alistair publicly retracts defamatory stories about Catherine. Details of Project Chimera sealed permanently, conditional on his compliance. "My child," Alistair pleaded desperately. You called our child a complication, Catherine responded coldly. This agreement ensures you won't hurt us again. Sign or lose everything. Defeated and knowing his fate, Alistair quietly nodded. You'll have it today. As he left, Catherine realized the battle was over. She had reclaimed control of her life, emerging stronger and surrounded by true family. The Alistair Finch, who approached the house, bore little resemblance to the confident millionaire who had abandoned Catherine months earlier. His sharp features were softened by defeat, his tailored suit now ill-fitting, as if the man inside had shrunk. Catherine watched him enter the morning room, sunlight framing her calm expression as she rested a hand protectively on her rounded belly. Eleanor stood silently beside the fireplace, her presence resolute. Catherine, Alistair began, his voice strained. Thank you for seeing me. She nodded slightly, her composure unwavering. The shift in power was clear. She was in control and he was here to plead. I'm sorry, he stammered, his gaze faltering under her steady eyes. For how I told you what I said, everything. I wasn't thinking clearly. She raised a hand, gently stopping him. You're sorry because you got caught, Alistair, not because you hurt me. He visibly flinched, the blunt truth piercing his practiced facade. She let the silence linger before calmly sliding a single sheet of paper toward him. Juliana drafted these terms. They're not negotiable. Alistair's hands trembled as he read. The house Catherine would retain the Greenwich estate debt-free. The settlement $200 million placed in a trust controlled solely by Catherine and Juliana Hayes for their child's future. Custody. Catherine would have exclusive custody. Alistair would only receive supervised visitation rights after completing 1 year of professional therapy. Public retraction. Alistair would publicly withdraw all defamatory claims against Catherine. Silence. In return for his agreement, details of Project Chimera would remain confidential. Alistair looked up, color draining from his face. Catherine, please, my child, you can't. You called our baby a complication. You were ready to discard us, Catherine replied steadily. I learned family for you was disposable. This agreement protects my family from you. You'll provide for your child materially, but your influence stops there. Sign it or risk everything. He glanced toward Eleanor, searching for sympathy, but finding none, only silent judgment. Realizing he had no leverage, Alistair gave a broken nod. You'll have it signed by my lawyers today, he said quietly, rising and leaving without another word. 6 months later, the morning room had transformed from a battlefield into a warm, inviting nursery filled with soft colors and gentle laughter. Catherine rocked gently, cradling her daughter, named Eleanor, Catherine Finch Ellie. The elder Eleanor stepped into the room, her stern demeanor softened into joyful grandmotherly warmth. "How's our angel?" she whispered, brushing a kiss across the baby's forehead. "Perfect," Catherine replied softly, smiling up at the woman who had become her strongest ally and closest family. Occasional news trickled in about Alistair. He had avoided prison, but his empire had collapsed. Isabella Rossi moved on, leaving him completely alone. Catherine felt no anger, no sadness, only calm indifference. Alistair was a closed chapter. Looking around the sunny nursery at her peaceful child and the loyal woman beside her, Catherine knew she'd gained something infinitely richer than Alistair's fortune. Strength, resilience, and the bond of family forged in the fiercest fire. From the ashes of a shocking betrayal, Catherine Bell didn't just rise. She soared. With her mother-in-law Eleanor as her unexpected ally, she turned a story of heartbreak into an epic tale of justice and empowerment. They took on a ruthless billionaire and his army of lawyers and proved that true strength isn't about the money in your bank account, but the courage in your heart and the loyalty of those who stand with you. This was more than a divorce. It was a revolution. A gentle hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Olivia Donovan clung to the edge of the hospital bed, every nerve in her body pulsing with the magnitude of her impending motherhood. Her heart hammered against her rib cage, partly from labor pains, partly from the dread that flickered in her mind. She could barely believe the text message she had just read. Her husband, Jason Donovan, had invited her here, his secret mistress, on the most sacred day of their marriage. Little did Olivia know this shocking discovery was only the beginning of a tangled web of betrayal, heartbreak, and unexpected redemption. From the day Olivia Shaw first encountered Jason Donovan at her best friend Catherine Dawson's engagement party, she thought she had found her perfect match. Olivia had always been the sensible one, a successful paralegal with a warm smile and a shy disposition. Jason was a newly minted financial consultant, brimming with an almost boyish confidence. Their first conversation was light and casual. He teased her about her dedication to detail while she half-seriously probed him on corporate ethics. Their flirtatious banter quickly sparked a bond that felt alive and full of promise. Despite growing up in dramatically different homes, Olivia was the daughter of two devout parents, Gerard and Denise Shaw, who lived modestly in the suburbs, while Jason had been raised in an affluent household. Both of them believed that love could bridge any gap. Jason respected Olivia's down-to-earth nature, and she adored his flair for living life boldly. Early in their relationship, no one could have foretold the unraveling lies that would soon creep into their story. When Olivia introduced Jason to her family, her parents welcomed him with open arms and countless questions. Gerard Shaw, a retired school principal, ensured he understood the value of trust. Denise, her mother, was the caretaker at heart, who baked a pie for Jason and asked him about his future plans in a gentle but direct way. Jason answered gracefully, speaking of advancement in his career, stable family life, and one-day children. Olivia's parents exchanged glances filled with hope. They saw a future son-in-law who carried promise and stability, someone who would cherish their only daughter. The wedding, held in a quaint chapel near Lake Harrington, was filled with laughter, tears, and vow upon vow of devoted love. Catherine Dawson. Olivia's best friend, served as her maid of honor, while Timothy Reed, Jason's old roommate from college, stood by him as best man. Candles glowed through stained glass windows as the two exchanged rings. The newlyweds danced beneath twinkling lights, lost in dreams of the happy life they would build together. Friends and family toasted to a union that sparkled with all the right illusions of permanence. Months rolled into years, 3 to be precise, when they discovered the thrilling news Olivia was pregnant. For Olivia, that moment signified the culmination of every promise they had whispered to each other on their wedding night. For Jason, the news triggered excitement, but also a slow, creeping sense of restraint. Fatherhood meant responsibility, commitment, and a redirection of priorities. The tension that had been simmering quietly underneath the surface of their seemingly perfect marriage began to flicker ominously. Late nights at the office became more frequent for Jason, while Olivia's pregnancy introduced a new set of daily challenges that weighed heavily on her physical and emotional state. Jason chalked up his absences to career pressures. He was aiming for a promotion, forging relationships with new clients, and seizing on every networking opportunity, or so he said. Olivia tried to be understanding, believing that these sacrifices would pay off once the baby arrived. Little did she know that her trust, once so solid, was about to be shattered. Around Olivia's 6th month of pregnancy, the cracks began to show. Telephone calls that ended abruptly when she entered the room, text messages that Jason shielded with the tilt of his phone, unexplained expenses on their joint credit card. As a paralegal, Olivia was trained to be observant. She noticed her husband's mood swings and recognized the telltale signs of a changed heart. But love can be both a powerful connector and a stubborn blindfold. She convinced herself it was her hormones causing paranoia. Catherine Dawson, who had also become a mother, recently cautioned Olivia not to ignore the signals. "Listen, Liv," she said one afternoon over coffee. "You're not crazy. When men start deleting entire threads on their phone and stepping out of the room to talk, something's up. I'm not trying to panic you, but trust your gut." Still, Olivia tried to reason away her concerns. Maybe Jason was planning a surprise baby shower with Timothy, or perhaps he needed privacy for high-stakes business deals. She confronted him gently about it, once halfway laughing at her own suspicions. He shrugged off her questions, blaming work secrets and non-disclosure agreements for his secrecy. Before that conversation ended, he planted a soft kiss on her forehead, telling her not to worry, and she, wanting desperately to believe him, let it slide. Quietly, though, Olivia kept a mental tab on every suspicious moment. She even confided in her older cousin, Patricia Reynolds, a skilled private investigator in Springfield. Patricia offered to look into things more thoroughly. However, Olivia hesitated, worried about invading Jason's privacy. She believed that a marriage was built on trust. But was that trust still intact? The unanswered question gnawed at her, echoing in her mind late at night as she lay awake, feeling her unborn baby shift gently inside her. By the 7th month of pregnancy, Jason's long nights became even more frequent. Some nights he came home with alcohol on his breath, or cologne that wasn't his usual brand. Olivia feared he was straying, but lacked concrete proof. The emotional toll on her was immense. She would sit on the edge of the bed, placing a protective hand over her belly, whispering reassurances to the baby. The pang of heartbreak lingered just below the surface, ready to break through with each new piece of evidence she encountered. Her name was Melissa Farnsworth. Olivia didn't know her personally, but she had heard the name in hushed tones around Jason's office gatherings. Melissa was a marketing executive known for her brash style and unrelenting ambition. Stories circulated about how she had dated wealthy men in the past, often fueling her social media persona with pictures of extravagant vacations and lavish gifts. No one pegged her as the type to seduce a man about to be a father, yet it happened all the same. It started with after-hours business meetings. Jason mentioned that his new client, who had ties to Melissa's marketing firm, required unique pitch strategies, which only Melissa could provide. They began meeting in restaurants, then private lounges. Eventually, text messages turned flirtatious phone calls became daily, and soon enough a full-blown affair erupted. For her part, Melissa was drawn to Jason's mix of ambition and the forbidden thrill of a married man. She took careful steps to avoid exposing the affair publicly, but behind closed doors she reveled in the power of luring him away from his pregnant wife. Jason found himself torn. On one hand, he still cared for Olivia and the unborn child, but the adrenaline and escape from the growing stresses of impending fatherhood pulled him closer to Melissa. Their affair was a potent cocktail of guilt, excitement, and moral disregard. Ironically, Timothy Reed, Jason's best friend, was the one who first spotted them together outside a swanky lounge in downtown Harrington. Timothy felt a cold shudder of betrayal run through him. He considered confronting Jason immediately, but a wave of hesitation held him back. Instead, he confided in Catherine Dawson, who pressed him to tell Olivia. "Don't let her find out on the delivery table," Catherine pleaded. "She needs to know the truth. This is beyond messed up." But Timothy found himself cornered by loyalty conflicts. Jason was like a brother to him, and the weight of exposing him felt agonizing. In the end, he made the worst choice. He stayed silent. He hoped the affair was only temporary, something Jason would regret and end before the baby arrived. Little did he know that the day Olivia went into labor, everything would come crashing down in the most tragic way possible. By Olivia's 8th month, her suspicions had solidified into a gnawing certainty. She felt it in her bones that Jason was unfaithful. It wasn't just the late-night outings or credit card bills. It was the hollowness in his eyes when they spoke, the forced kisses on her cheek before he left for work, the intangible sense that his heart was elsewhere. She cried silently in the shower, pressing her palm against her abdomen, trying to remain strong for the baby. She replayed every moment in her mind, searching for where it could have gone wrong. Perhaps it was the day she told him she was pregnant. Maybe the reality of fatherhood was too daunting. Or perhaps it was an unspoken void in their marriage that she hadn't noticed. Regardless, she realized she was losing him. The heartbreak weighed her down like an anchor in stormy waters. One afternoon, as she went for a routine checkup at Harrington General Hospital, she saw them together. Jason strolling hand in hand with Melissa Farnsworth near the cafeteria, both of them too lost in their conversation to realize Olivia was standing just a few feet away. Olivia was there to see Dr. Hannah West for her prenatal visit, but the moment she witnessed that intimate contact, time froze. Her heart thundered in her ears. She forgot for a second that she was pregnant, forgot her physical pains, forgot every piece of advice Catherine and Patricia had given her. All she saw was betrayal incarnate. For a split second, she considered confronting them both right there in front of the entire cafeteria. Yet fear and humiliation consumed her. She couldn't do it. Instead, with trembling hands, she retrieved her phone and snapped 2 quick photos, visual proof that would forever be etched into her memory. Then she turned away and ducked into an empty corridor, tears blurring her vision. She could hardly remember how she managed to compose herself enough to attend her prenatal appointment after that. Something inside Olivia hardened that day. The illusions that had masked her relationship shattered, replaced by anger and heartbreak. She resolved to confront Jason, but she hesitated, uncertain how to navigate the final month of her pregnancy under such emotional duress. A part of her feared the confrontation might send her into premature labor. Little did she know that fate wouldn't wait for her readiness. The day Olivia went into labor dawned bright and chilly. She was exactly 2 weeks from her due date, but the baby decided it was time to make an entrance early. She was in the kitchen sipping a cup of chamomile tea, lost in thoughts about how to address the affair, when suddenly a sharp pain gripped her. A wetness flooded her pajama pants. Her water had broken. A sense of both panic and relief coursed through her. Panicked because everything was happening faster than planned. Relieved because at least for the next few hours her focus would be solely on bringing her child safely into the world. She dialed Jason's number with shaking fingers. He picked up, sounding distracted, likely at the office or worse with Melissa. She forced herself to remain calm as she said, "Jason, it's time. My water broke. I need you to drive me to the hospital." He arrived 30 minutes later, disheveled and tense, tossing an apologetic look her way. Olivia didn't have the energy for a confrontation. The contractions were intensifying, leaving her breathless. She simply whispered, "Please, just help me get to Dr. West." Without a word, he gently guided her into the car. In that moment, she almost forgot about the affair, or at least managed to push it aside for the sake of their baby. But Olivia's heartbreak re-emerged as they arrived at Harrington General Hospital. She noticed the quick, furtive glance Jason cast at his phone. He looked guilty, as though texting someone the second they arrived in the parking lot. The only person that could be, Olivia realized, was her. A fresh wave of agony pulsed through Olivia's heart. Still, she breathed through the contractions, focusing on the immediate task, delivering a healthy baby. Nurses Linda Carmichael and Carla Henderson quickly escorted Olivia to a private labor room. Dr. Hannah West arrived soon after, offering gentle reassurance. Jason hovered near the bed, trying to be attentive yet fidgeting with his phone. Olivia's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She felt the unstoppable tide of labor, her body trembling under each contraction, while her soul trembled under the fear that the man she loved, the father of her child, might be irredeemably lost. Within an hour, Olivia's labor progressed rapidly, surprising the medical staff. It was her first child, yet her contractions were intensifying at an unusual pace. As the pain crescendoed, she clutched Jason's hand, tears of both pain and betrayal streaming down her cheeks. She whispered, "Stay with me, please," but even as she said it, a sense of foreboding loomed. Melissa Farnsworth appeared in the corridor outside the delivery room like a jarring specter. She was dressed in a tailored outfit that seemed entirely unsuited for a maternity ward. Nurse Carla Henderson was the first to see her. Confused, Carla politely asked if she needed help. Melissa responded with confidence, "I'm here to support Jason Donovan. He asked me to come." Carla blinked, not knowing how to respond, and directed her to the waiting area. The news traveled swiftly among the hospital staff. Someone was there claiming to be the father's support. Meanwhile, Olivia, now dilated to 6 centimeters, was battling a storm of contractions. Her emotional agony quickly caught flame when Linda Carmichael came into the room, awkwardly pulling Jason aside. Olivia could hear bits of the hushed conversation mention of Melissa Farnsworth's waiting area. Should she be here? Olivia's gaze locked onto Jason's face, which twisted into an expression of guilt. Everything fell into place in a way that made her want to scream. He had actually invited his mistress to the hospital on the day his wife was giving birth to their child. The betrayal felt so colossal she could hardly breathe. Her contractions racked her body, but the emotional pain was worse. Summoning a last vestige of strength, Olivia hissed, "Jason, get out! Now!" Her voice trembled with both heartbreak and rage. Jason stumbled through excuses, something about "she's just here to support me, and it's not what you think," but his stammering only fueled Olivia's fury. In that moment, no words could mollify the unimaginable insult. As soon as Jason left the room, presumably to pacify Melissa, Olivia's protective instinct ignited. She motioned to Nurse Linda Carmichael, demanding lock the door. "I don't want him or her coming in." The nurse exchanged a worried glance with Dr. West, who was checking the fetal monitor. However, they could see the panic in Olivia's eyes and recognized that stress could complicate her labor. Dr. West quietly nodded to Linda, who complied and slid the room's door lock into place. Olivia inhaled in ragged breaths, tears hot against her cheeks as another contraction tore through her. She clenched the bed rails, every muscle screaming. "I can't believe him," she whispered, the shock still fresh. "Who does that?" Her words came out in fragmented sobs. The medical staff hovered around her, offering calm words of reassurance. But the hurt felt like a raw wound throbbing with each new wave of labor. Outside, Jason knocked gently. He tried to plead through the door. "Olivia, open up. Please let me explain." She refused to answer. She couldn't even bear to look at him right now. All she could think was that the moment she had anticipated with love and excitement was now tainted beyond measure. In her darkest nightmares, she could never have envisioned delivering her child under these circumstances. In the hallway, Melissa Farnsworth stood at a distance, arms crossed, looking more annoyed than remorseful. A part of her still felt entitled to be there, ignoring the moral abomination of intruding on a wife's childbirth. Jason, torn by the chaotic swirl of guilt, confusion, and misplaced loyalty, tried to calm Melissa, while also insisting he needed to be by Olivia's side. Melissa's eyes narrowed. She threatened that if he walked away from her now, she'd go public about their relationship. Jason felt cornered, trapped between two worlds that were colliding in the worst possible way. In the midst of the ordeal, Olivia asked Nurse Linda to call hospital security. Her voice, though trembling, was resolute. "I can't deal with him. I can't deal with her. Get them both away from me." Linda hesitated, but recognized the seriousness of the situation. The last thing Olivia needed was a confrontation that would jeopardize her health or the baby's. Security officers arrived promptly. They approached Jason and Melissa to de-escalate the situation. Officer Trevor Dyson, a compassionate older man, tried to reason with them. "Look, you two need to leave the immediate area. The patient is in active labor and she's requested privacy. If you don't comply, we'll have to escort you out." Jason, still desperate to be present for the birth of his child, pleaded, "But that's my wife in there. I have rights. I'm the father." Trevor shrugged calmly, repeating, "She's asked for you both to leave." Suddenly, Melissa let out a scornful laugh. "You can't be serious. Jason's the father of that baby. He should be allowed in." Her tone dripped with condescension, but Trevor Dyson, unaffected by her bravado, repeated his directive. Tension crackled in the hallway. A cluster of nurses whispered among themselves. This was not a typical scenario, even in a busy maternity ward. While the standoff continued outside, Olivia gritted her teeth against another wave of pain. Dr. West checked her dilation, now at 8 centimeters. The baby was coming. Even in her anguish, Olivia's heart pounded with love for her unborn child, fueling her determination to deliver safely. The heartbreak of betrayal blended with the primal maternal urge to protect her baby at all costs. She resolved not to let Jason, or especially Melissa, tarnish the sacred miracle about to unfold. After tense moments of debate, security made the call. Both Jason and Melissa needed to move to the waiting area near the front lobby or leave the premises entirely. Sensing he had run out of options, Jason motioned for Melissa to follow him down the corridor. She sighed dramatically, making an exaggerated show of displeasure, but complied. At that moment, Timothy Reed, who had arrived in a hurry after hearing Olivia was in labor, witnessed the scene. He recognized Melissa immediately from the time he spotted her with Jason outside the lounge. The realization that she was brazenly at the hospital during Olivia's labor left Timothy speechless. Jason turned to Timothy, panic etched on his face. "I messed up, man. I don't know what to do." Timothy stared at him, anger rising. "You brought your mistress here on the day your wife is giving birth to your child. Are you completely insane?" Jason's gaze dropped. He had no rebuttal. His decisions had clearly spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, inside the locked labor room, Olivia's body continued to tremble with contractions. The heartbreak fueled her adrenaline in a bizarre way, numbing her to the pain. West remained calm, guiding Olivia through each push, each breath reminding her to focus on the baby. Nurse Carla Henderson offered a cool cloth for her forehead, gentle encouraging words echoing in the sterile room. Thoughts crowded Olivia's mind in between contractions. Did Jason love Melissa more than me? How could he do this to me now? Will the baby sense all this turmoil? She felt rage, grief, and utter disbelief entangled in one suffocating knot. But each contraction forced her to concentrate on life's most primal act, birthing a child. Through tear-blurred eyes, she clung to the knowledge that this baby was her priority, her hope, her future. After what felt like an eternity, the moment arrived. Dr. West calmly told Olivia, "It's time to push, Olivia. Focus on my voice. You can do this." Gritting her teeth, tears still streaking her cheeks, Olivia summoned every last reserve of strength. Another contraction hit. She bore down, crying out in raw determination. In that final surge of will, the baby's head crowned. Carla Henderson offered an encouraging cheer. "You're almost there." 2 more pushes, and then Olivia heard it. The sharp, miraculous cry of her newborn child. Relief, euphoria, and heartache flooded through her all at once. Dr. West lifted the baby into view, quickly checking vital signs. "A healthy baby girl," she announced, her voice warm with pride. Olivia's tears of heartbreak intermingled with overwhelming love as they placed her daughter on her chest. The baby's face was scrunched, tiny fists waving in the air, eyes squeezed shut in that first expression of life. In that instant, the entire world seemed to collapse into the mother-child bond. Outside, chaos reigned, Jason's betrayal. Melissa's unwelcome presence, the security guards. But here, for just a moment, there was only Olivia and her daughter, connected by a love so primal and pure, it eclipsed everything else. Exhausted, Olivia clung to her child, feeling the baby's small body rise and fall with her own ragged breaths. A wild sob escaped her, a mixture of joy and sorrow. She kissed the baby's forehead, whispering, "I love you." And for a short, sacred time, she forgot about Jason's existence entirely. News of the successful delivery soon reached the hallway. Timothy heard the baby's cry echo down the corridor. He closed his eyes in silent gratitude. But Jason was wild with nerves. He fumbled at the locked door, calling through the gap, "Olivia, I need to see my daughter. Please let me in." Security hovered, unsure how to proceed. The medical staff waited for Olivia's directive. Inside, Olivia laid her head back on the pillow, tears slipping silently. She felt physically spent but emotionally galvanized. "Nurse," she said softly to Linda, "please open the door just a crack, and if you can bring my phone." Linda did as requested, unlocking the door just enough to hand Olivia's phone over. Jason tried to peer in through the small opening, but Linda stepped into his line of sight, blocking him. Olivia, holding her newborn close, dialed Jason's number. He picked up immediately, sounding frantic. "Liv, I'm sorry. Let me see the baby. I made a mistake." Olivia cut him off sharply, her voice low. "A mistake is forgetting a dinner reservation, Jason. Inviting your mistress to the hospital while your wife is in labor isn't a mistake. It's a betrayal so deep I can't even begin to process it." Jason was momentarily speechless. In the background, Olivia could hear Melissa's muffled protests and Timothy's attempts to calm everyone down. "You're going to listen," Olivia continued. "First, I need you to get that woman out of this hospital. I don't care how. I don't want her near me or our child. Second, you will wait outside. If I decide you can meet your daughter today, I'll let you know. Otherwise, leave." Jason stammered something unintelligible. Olivia ended the call. Then she exhaled, focusing her gaze on the tiny baby cradled in her arms. She whispered to the newborn, "I'm so sorry this is how you had to come into the world, but I promise I will protect you." And with those words, a fierce maternal resolve took root in her heart, overshadowing the heartbreak that threatened to consume her. Meanwhile, Melissa was far from leaving. She folded her arms, proclaiming that Jason had invited her to stay, that they were a couple. Timothy found it almost comical if it weren't so tragic. He rounded on Melissa, voice shaking with anger. "Are you kidding me? She just gave birth. Show some respect and get out." Melissa shot back a look of pure venom. "You have no right to talk to me like that. Jason wants me here. He told me so." Jason stood between them, a man entirely undone by the ramifications of his own deceit. He tried to appease Melissa while also needing to see his newborn. Security officers hovered ready to intervene. Tensions soared as Melissa raised her voice. "Jason, are you going to let them treat me this way? I'm here for you." She reached out to grab his arm, but he pulled away. Desperation tore through Jason's facade. "I didn't think this through," he muttered, voice quaking. "Melissa, this is—" She cut him off. "You promised me we'd have a future, that you'd leave her. Then she calls and you rush here. You can't have it both ways." Her eyes flashed with anger. Jason swallowed hard, haunted by the sound of the baby's cry he had heard through the door. "But that's my child in there," he said, voice unsteady. "I can't just walk away." His words lit a bitter flame in Melissa's chest. She realized perhaps for the first time that no matter what illusions Jason had given her, the existence of his child would forever tie him to Olivia. In that split second, the cracks in Melissa's bravado appeared. She realized she was no longer the priority. Security officers took advantage of the lull in their shouting. Gently but firmly, they escorted Melissa to the elevator, ignoring her wrathful protests. Jason watched her go, feeling an odd mixture of regret and relief. When the elevator doors closed, he turned back, his gaze fixed on the locked door to the delivery room. In the delivery room, Dr. West and Nurse Carla were helping Olivia clean up and move to a recovery bed, the baby swaddled in soft blankets. Olivia was exhausted physically and emotionally drained. But the baby's tiny gurgles kept her grounded in the present, a miraculous reminder of new life and hope. Timothy knocked softly on the door and spoke through it. "Olivia, it's me. Melissa's gone. Jason is alone. Security is letting him stay in the waiting area. It's your call." A silence followed, then Olivia responded. "Thank you, Timothy. Right now, I just want some peace." And so Jason sat in the waiting area, head in his hands, replaying every reckless decision that had led him here. He didn't know how to fix what he'd broken. All he knew was that he wanted to hold his daughter, to somehow be a father, despite his unforgivable actions. The waiting area was eerily quiet. Even the usual hustle of the hospital felt muted. Every now and then he glimpsed new mothers being wheeled to their rooms, or families celebrating with balloons and flowers. It all served as a stark reminder of the joyous moment he'd ruined. Time crawled. An hour passed, maybe more. Then Nurse Linda approached Jason. "She's resting now. Dr. West says both mother and baby are stable." She paused, searching his face. "She hasn't said anything about you seeing the baby, but let me give her your message if you have one." Jason swallowed the lump in his throat. "Please tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I want to see my daughter and that I'll leave immediately if she doesn't want me there." Linda nodded solemnly and disappeared back down the corridor. Jason remained slumped in a chair, wishing he could rewind every selfish decision he had made. It wasn't until late evening that Olivia finally allowed him into the room. Timothy accompanied Jason to ensure the situation remained calm. As Jason entered, he saw Olivia propped up in bed, the baby in her arms. Nurse Carla nearby checking vital signs. Olivia looked pale, her hair matted to her forehead. Still, she radiated the fierce glow of new motherhood. Jason stepped forward tentatively. "Liv," he began, voice trembling. I can't even begin to express—" He trailed off, eyes welling up with tears. The guilt and shame contorted his face. Olivia raised one hand, a silent signal for him to stop. "I'm allowing you in here because you're her father," she said, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. "But don't think for a moment that means I've forgiven you." Carla, sensing the tension, quietly stepped to the side. Jason approached the bed, glimpsing his daughter for the first time up close. A small sigh escaped him. She was so perfect, so tiny, her entire being untainted by the heartbreak swirling around her. For a moment, a profound paternal urge washed over him. He reached out and Olivia let him gently stroke the baby's head. Emboldened by the wave of emotion, Jason tried to speak. "I know I messed up. I was scared about fatherhood." Olivia's voice cracked like a whip. "You were scared of fatherhood, so you found comfort in another woman. Then you bring her to my delivery." She swallowed, tears forming in her eyes. "I can't look at you, Jason. I feel sick just thinking about it." He bowed his head, tears dropping to the floor. "I deserve that. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I do want to be in our baby's life. Please don't shut me out completely." Despite her anger, Olivia felt a pang of sympathy both for the child and for the man she once loved. "We'll discuss it," she said coldly. "But right now I need rest, and I can't handle your presence any longer." She let him hold the baby for a few fragile moments. Tears streamed down Jason's cheeks as he cradled his daughter. The innocence of her presence confronted him more harshly than Olivia's words ever could. After a minute, he placed her back in Olivia's arms and staggered out of the room, feeling as though he had just witnessed the end of his world. While Olivia remained at the hospital recovering, word of the scandal spread among their circle of friends and family. Her cousin Patricia Reynolds, who had once offered her private investigation services, paid Olivia a visit. "If you need anything like evidence or legal recourse, just let me know," Patricia said, eyes glinting with protective rage. Olivia managed a weak smile. "Thank you, cousin. I appreciate that." Jason's parents, who lived in a neighboring state, learned of the fiasco as well. They were mortified. Linda Donovan, his mother, telephoned Olivia with a tearful apology. "I don't know what got into my son. We didn't raise him to be like this." Olivia, still raw with emotion, had little to say. The sadness in Linda's voice told her that the shame was genuine, but it didn't quell her own heartbreak. Meanwhile, Melissa Farnsworth was nowhere to be found. She had posted a cryptic message on social media about never trusting a man who can't stand by his promises, but she kept her distance. Perhaps she realized that any attempt to salvage her relationship with Jason was futile after he rushed back to the maternity ward. The scandal had tarnished her image among her professional network. Talk circulated about her brazen interference at a hospital. Whispered gossip indicated she might be leaving town to save face. Finally, on Olivia's third day in the hospital, Dr. West cleared her for discharge. Timothy helped gather her belongings while Catherine cradled the baby. Jason hovered in the corner, uncertain if he should even be there. Olivia looked at him solemnly. "Let's be clear. You're driving us home because I don't have the energy to hail a cab. But once we're there, you're leaving. I need space to think. Understood?" Jason nodded. He recognized that he was lucky she was even allowing him to help in any capacity. As they walked through the hospital corridors toward the main exit carrying their tiny precious daughter, the tension weighed heavily. For Olivia, stepping out of the hospital felt like stepping into a new reality. Her life now revolved around caring for her daughter and also navigating the aftermath of an unimaginable betrayal. Back at the Donovan home, everything felt surreal. The baby's nursery was ready, decorated in pastel yellows and soft greens. A brand new crib stood beneath a mobile of stars. For months, Olivia had daydreamed about placing her newborn there, reading to her, singing lullabies. She never imagined the father of her child might be on the brink of leaving. True to her word, Olivia insisted Jason step out as soon as he carried in the final bag. She didn't want him sleeping under the same roof. Timothy offered him a spot on his couch temporarily. Jason reluctantly agreed, packing a small suitcase with essentials. Before he left, he hovered near the crib, gazing at the baby sleeping peacefully. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her. "I'm so sorry." Then he walked out the door, closing behind him with a sense of finality. Olivia's first night at home with the baby was a patchwork of feedings, diaper changes, and attempts at rest. Catherine slept in the guest room, ready to assist. Emotionally, Olivia was numb. Each time she looked at her baby's face, she felt a swell of love so powerful it made her chest ache. Each time she remembered the day of the birth, tears threatened to spill again. Exhaustion, heartbreak, and awe merged into a single experience, leaving her drained of all but the most essential energy to care for her child. Neighbors and friends dropped off meals and gifts, offering supportive words. But the house felt empty without the father's presence. Even though Olivia seethed with anger, a quiet part of her missed the husband she used to know. She craved an explanation that could make sense of his betrayal. Yet deep down, she doubted any explanation would suffice. Jason spent those early days sleeping fitfully on Timothy's couch, haunted by nightmares of losing his family forever. He replayed his affair with Melissa Farnsworth over and over, trying to pinpoint why he let it happen. Was it fear of being tied down? A misguided sense of adventure? Simple weakness in the face of temptation? Each question felt like a barb in his chest. Timothy, exasperated but still loyal, tried to encourage him. "You messed up big time," he told Jason over black coffee one morning. "But you can't just wallow. You have a daughter now, and she needs you, even if Olivia never wants to see you again." Jason nodded miserably. "I know. I just can't figure out how to face her." Eventually, he mustered the courage to reach out to a marriage counselor, Dr. Megan Garcia, who specialized in crisis intervention. At first, it was just him, alone, talking about guilt, how he had disappointed Olivia, how his own father had been distant when he was a child, fueling a deep-seated fear of fatherhood. Dr. Garcia advised him that if he ever wanted a chance at salvaging his family, he needed to be transparent, sincere, and patient. Bolstered by these sessions, Jason wrote a heartfelt letter to Olivia, laying bare every detail of the affair, apologizing without making excuses, and expressing his willingness to do whatever it took to earn her trust again. He slipped the letter into her mailbox one evening, praying she would read it. When Olivia found the letter, her initial reaction was to tear it up without reading. But curiosity and a lingering hope compelled her to read Jason's words. She read each line with trembling hands. He confessed to the affair in full, how it started, how it spiraled, how he lost control. He expressed shame, regret, and a willingness to go through counseling to give her space, or even to grant her a divorce if that's what she wanted. Olivia sat at her kitchen table, tears dripping onto the paper. She looked at her sleeping baby and the bassinet, so innocent in all of this. Anger flared again. How dare Jason drag their child into such a maelstrom of adult betrayal? But part of her recognized that Jason's honesty, albeit belated, carried a level of vulnerability she'd never seen in him before. That night she dreamed of their early days, his smile, his laughter, the way he used to look at her like she was the only person in the room. Waking up, she felt torn. She hated what he'd done, but a small part of her yearned for the family they had once imagined. There was no easy solution. The path forward seemed as murky as ever. After a few more days, Olivia decided to meet Jason in the presence of Dr. Megan Garcia. She did so mainly for the baby's sake, wanting a safe environment to talk. Catherine watched the baby while Olivia made the drive to Dr. Garcia's office, her stomach twisted in knots. Jason was already there, looking pale and anxious. Dr. Garcia greeted them warmly, ushering them into a comfortable room with plush chairs. The session began with awkward silence. Eventually, Olivia spoke. "Why?" Her voice cracked on the single syllable. Jason swallowed hard, tears filling his eyes. I was afraid, he began. Afraid of losing my freedom, failing as a father, not being the man you deserved. Then Melissa appeared, and I let my fears and weaknesses dictate my actions. Though Olivia was seething inside, hearing him articulate his vulnerability softened her fury slightly. Dr. Garcia guided them through difficult exercises, urging them to communicate how they felt. Olivia voiced her heartbreak, how she had felt lonely in the final months of pregnancy, how his affair felt like a betrayal beyond words. By the end of the session, they reached no resolution, but they had started talking. Olivia agreed to another session. She made no promises beyond that her walls of self-protection were firmly in place. Jason, for his part, was relieved she hadn't filed for divorce outright. Weeks passed. Jason continued therapy on his own and started attending group sessions for men grappling with infidelity guilt. Olivia juggled new motherhood with the emotional toll of deciding whether or not to salvage her marriage. She allowed Jason to visit the baby occasionally under her watchful eye, but made him leave after an hour or two. The tension in the air was palpable, but there was also a glimmer of hope. One day while Jason was there, the baby stirred awake in Olivia's arms. Without thinking, Olivia passed the baby to Jason, saying, "It's time for her feeding, but let's try a bottle today." The motion felt oddly intimate. As Jason fed the baby, his eyes brimmed with tears. He looked at Olivia with gratitude, and for a moment they shared a fragile peace. Neither knew if that peace would hold, but for the baby's sake they hoped. Catherine, seeing small steps of progress, tried to bolster Olivia's morale. "You're stronger than you realize," she told her friend. "No matter what happens, you have a beautiful baby girl and you'll always be her hero." Olivia appreciated the sentiment, though her heart still felt heavy with indecision. Just when Olivia and Jason were forging a tentative truce, a new twist jolted their fragile progress. Melissa Farnsworth reappeared this time, contacting Jason by phone. She claimed to have missed her period and insisted she might be pregnant. The news, delivered in a single phone call, detonated like a bomb. Jason stared at his phone in horror. He was already grappling with reconciling with Olivia. Now there was a possibility he had fathered another child. Jason confided in Timothy, who advised him to request a paternity test before jumping to conclusions. He also insisted Jason tell Olivia immediately. With dread in his heart, Jason followed through, meeting Olivia in Dr. Garcia's office for a scheduled session and laying out Melissa's claim. Olivia's face paled. "So now we might have 2 babies in this mess?" she asked, voice razor sharp. Her anger flared anew. "You know what I'm done. If she's pregnant with your child, you're going to have to deal with that on your own. My baby has nothing to do with that fiasco." Jason's eyes filled with tears. Dr. Garcia tried to mediate, urging them to remain calm until a test confirmed or denied paternity, but Olivia felt something inside her snap. She rose from her chair, grabbed her purse, and marched out, leaving Jason and Dr. Garcia stunned in her wake. In the ensuing days, Jason convinced Melissa to undergo a paternity test as soon as medically possible. The waiting period was excruciating. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He tried calling Olivia multiple times, but she rarely answered. When she did, it was solely about baby logistics. Nothing more. The day of the test results, Jason sat in a small clinic. Melissa was there, looking anxious but defiant. As a nurse handed the sealed envelope to them, Jason's heart pounded in his ears. He opened it with shaking hands, scanning the results. Negative. He wasn't the father. The relief flooded through him with such intensity that he nearly collapsed into the chair. Melissa, on the other hand, looked stunned, then furious. "You're telling me you put me through all this only to—" she began, but Jason cut her off. "Put you through this? You came back claiming I might be the father, when clearly there was someone else." Melissa glowered, then stormed out. Jason sank into the chair, feeling as though he had narrowly escaped yet another disaster. Jason wasted no time in calling Olivia the moment he left the clinic. When she picked up, he blurted out, "It's not mine." The test was negative. A long silence followed. He could practically feel her breathing on the other side. "Good," she finally said in a subdued tone. Another pause. "But that doesn't erase what happened, Jason." "You still slept with her." Jason swallowed. "I know it doesn't. But I swear I'm doing everything to make this right. I'm focusing on therapy, on being a good father." "Liv, please, can we keep talking?" She exhaled, her voice still tinged with pain. "We can talk, but don't expect miracles." It was a small step, but for Jason it felt like a lifeline. Slowly over the next couple of weeks, Olivia allowed more visits. They attended counseling sessions together and talked about co-parenting arrangements. Trust once shattered was not easy to rebuild, but they both felt an obligation to give their child a stable environment. They faced the future uncertainly, not knowing if their marriage would survive, but determined to try. With the baby's 1-month celebration approaching, Olivia's parents, Gerard and Denise Shaw, visited. They were appalled by Jason's actions and had barely spoken to him since the birth. Yet they also recognized that the couple needed support. Gerard took Jason aside one afternoon. His voice was stern but not unkind. "I don't understand how you could do this. My daughter trusted you. But for the baby's sake, I hope you fix yourself and earn her forgiveness if she's willing." Jason's eyes watered. "I will do whatever it takes, sir." Gerard nodded, leaving the room without further words. Meanwhile, Denise offered Olivia quiet, understanding cooking meals and helping with childcare, letting her daughter know she was loved unconditionally. Their presence, while a bit tense, reminded both Jason and Olivia that family bonds can be both a source of comfort and a mirror reflecting one's failings. Just as life began to settle, Melissa Farnsworth dropped a legal bomb. She claimed Jason owed her compensation for emotional distress and defamation, asserting that his denial of paternity and the subsequent gossip had harmed her reputation. It was a frivolous lawsuit, but one that threatened to drag Olivia and Jason back into turmoil. She sought a large sum, presumably hoping they would settle to keep the scandal out of public record. When the legal notice arrived, Olivia nearly lost her composure. "Are you kidding me?" she said, voice shaking with fury. "After everything she's done, she wants compensation." Jason looked equally stunned. "I'll handle this," he assured her. "Patricia, your cousin, maybe she can help." Olivia nodded, her eyes ablaze. If there was one sure way to push them onto the same side again, it was a common enemy like Melissa Farnsworth. Patricia Reynolds jumped at the opportunity to represent them. After reviewing the evidence, she confidently declared the lawsuit baseless. "Don't worry," she told Olivia. "This is a desperate move. We'll file a counterclaim for legal fees and malicious prosecution if she persists." Olivia let out a breath of relief. For a moment she felt solidarity with Jason and us against her dynamic. It was odd how adversity could sometimes unite two wounded hearts, even if just temporarily. In the weeks leading up to the legal proceedings, Olivia and Jason spent more time together strategizing with Patricia. Their baby girl provided a beacon of light amid the chaos. Each day they found small ways to bridge the gap between them. Jason would bring groceries. Olivia would let him feed the baby. They talked about schedules and budgets. Slowly, a sense of teamwork emerged. Their counseling sessions continued to probe deeper into the root causes of Jason's infidelity and Olivia's feelings of abandonment. Some days were more successful than others. There were arguments, tears, and nights where Olivia barely slept. But there were also moments of genuine connection, small glimpses of how they used to be. One evening while the baby slept, Jason and Olivia talked in hushed tones about the future. "I'm not sure if I can ever look at you the same way," Olivia said, fiddling with a loose thread on the couch pillow. "But I see how hard you're trying. I see how much you love our daughter." Jason nodded, tears threatening. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm hoping you'll give me one anyway for our family's sake." A fragile hope settled between them, tenuous as a cobweb but shimmering all the same. The day of the lawsuit hearing arrived. Melissa Farnsworth appeared with a swagger, but her attorney seemed unprepared. Patricia presented the paternity test results messages from Melissa that indicated her knowledge Jason was likely not the father and statements from third parties attesting to her public behavior. The judge dismissed Melissa's claim on grounds of insufficient evidence and blatant lack of merit. Moreover, the judge reprimanded Melissa's attorney for bringing such an obviously frivolous lawsuit to court. In a final blow, the judge ordered Melissa to pay for the defendant's legal fees. Melissa stormed out, her face red with humiliation. Olivia and Jason, though still overshadowed by their marital problems, shared a moment of triumph. It was the first time in months they had genuinely smiled at each other. After the lawsuit fiasco, life finally calmed. Olivia's baby thrived, her laughter infectious, her gaze alight in the chaos. Olivia melted at every coup but couldn't forget the day she saw Melissa in the hospital corridor. Some nights she woke in a cold sweat, the betrayal still fresh. Jason's every effort, open phones, reduced hours, endless therapy helped, but the thorn of heartbreak still pierced her. Still, she couldn't ignore the changes. Jason had softened, more attentive, more present. Friends and family noticed. Eventually, Olivia agreed to let him move back in on a trial basis. Boundaries were set, separate bedrooms, full honesty, and continued therapy. It was awkward, but practical. Late nights with their baby led to brief moments of reconnection. Olivia still carried pain, but for their daughter's sake and her own peace, she allowed space for healing. The road ahead was uncertain, but forgiveness, fragile as it was, had finally begun to bloom. As the baby neared 6 months, her first babbles filled the house with joy. Olivia and Jason often knelt on the carpet, coaxing her with silly sounds. Each giggle from their daughter created fleeting moments of peace between them. Olivia began to realize that if she wanted to move forward, either alone or with Jason, she'd have to let go of some of the anger. In therapy, Dr. Garcia guided her through forgiveness, not to excuse Jason's actions, but to free herself from the weight of rage. One night, Jason found her rocking the baby. She gestured for him to come closer, and he carefully steadied the chair. They sat in silence, their baby breathing softly. "I wish I could warn my younger self," Olivia whispered. Jason nodded. "Maybe this baby is our second chance." Olivia leaned into him slightly. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. As weeks passed, Olivia and Jason's bond began to slowly mend. They weren't naive, trust would take time, but they kept showing up. Counseling, shared parenting, and quiet honesty helped them confront the ghosts of betrayal. On their daughter's first birthday, they hosted a small gathering. Friends and family surrounded the pastel balloon arch in the backyard. The baby, now toddling in a frilly dress, was the center of everyone's joy. Olivia caught Jason's eye across the yard, and for the first time in months gave him a genuine smile. That night, after putting their daughter to bed, Olivia took his hand. "I'm still hurt," she said, "but you're trying for me and her. I'm willing to keep going if you are." Jason nodded, eyes wet. "I promise." Side by side, they stepped into the quiet of their shared home, hope flickering but alive. Thank you for joining this emotional journey, one filled with heartache, betrayal, and ultimately a delicate thread of renewed hope. Olivia and Jason's story isn't a fairy tale with a perfect ending, but rather an honest depiction of how life can blindside us when we least expect it. Their road to reconciliation demonstrates that forgiveness is not for the faint of heart. It requires courage, patience, and vulnerability. And sometimes, even after all that healing, remains an ongoing process.